and welcome back to another episode of Wuhan Weekly, a podcast that follows the trials and tribulations of 4 Scottish teachers in China. I am Lewis Thomas Rowe, and with me today are Ruth Taylor.
Hello.
Tony Ingalls.
Hi.
And Dean McKinnon Thompson.
Hello there.
Right, so let's get down to business. Dean, where have you been the past 2 weeks?
Well, I arrived Tuesday last week, late. Entirely my fault. Because I got the genius notion that I'd go home and do my blood test at the end of the teaching year last year, rather than do it in China. Because I'm scared of needles.
Right, so you ended up having to go to the hospital anyway here in China and get your blood taken again, right?
Yeah, but I didn't have to do the chest x-ray again, which was so coolio.
There you go, that's alright then. So we had a bit of an introduction to ourselves last week, so could you tell everybody a bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Dean, I'm 26, I have 2 university degrees, a master's. I came to China because I like the history and the culture, and I read books.
Reading books is for nerds. Excellent. Okay, so we had a bit of a rough week this week. So on Wednesday of last week, we got a holiday for 3 days to commemorate the 70th anniversary of China defeating fascism. So because of that, they decided to bring us on the Sunday instead. So we had a 6-day week. So how did you guys feel about that? I was absolutely knackered by the end of it.
Tired. So tired.
Yeah, still recuperating.
It's hard because it's our first full week at school. We worked Tuesday, Wednesday, and then had Thursday and Friday off. We were off Saturday, and then so we'd only really been in school for 2 days, and then we had a 6-day week to deal with. So that was tough. So
you arrived halfway through that, Dean. So you only got a 4-day week, was it?
Yeah, I arrived on Tuesday, so I taught Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so it's 3 days.
Oh, okay, that's
so
alright then.
It was much more pleasant for me.
Yeah. So we actually had another holiday after the 70th anniversary of fascism. We had a wee holiday, well, not a holiday, but there was a special day for teachers on Wednesday, which was called Teachers' Day. I was wondering if anyone can tell me a little bit about Teachers' Day and what it's all about.
So Teachers' Day is a day for the pupils to commemorate, definitely not commemorate, but celebrate is the better word. Celebrate their teachers.
Commemorate is so ominous.
We're not all dead. Yeah. Celebrate their teachers, and they do this by giving us presents. I think Ruth said to us recently that she thinks it's actually just a way for parents to get their kids to endear themselves to the teachers early on in the school year so that we can, treat them favorably.
So it was essentially the 5th day of school.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, happy Teacher's Day. Here are all these wonderful gifts. Please put my child at the front of the class kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the gifts were really nice. I mean, I got a mug for my tea.
Oh.
And like a scarf, because 30 degrees Celsius, I need a scarf.
You need a warm neck,
Yeah,
mate.
I need
that is true.
I got several single roses. Felt like so many Valentine's Days rolled into one, except by little kids. Kind of weird.
Did you get anything particularly nice, Ruth?
I got a lot of flowers, and I got a card from a little girl called Princess, obviously.
Adorable.
Classic Chinese
Classic
English name.
Chinese. From Princess, and another card from John, so the names obviously vary.
Come on, John, where's your wacky name?
Yeah, I know. No, it was lovely. I mean, I think the cynic in me is like, oh, it's 5 days into term and you're telling me that you love me and you want to give me flowers and that I'm your favourite teacher and you don't know me. So, but it is nice and it's very sweet and the kids obviously just want to make a fuss and make you feel special. So,
I mean, the gifts we got were very tame. So, Dean, actually, you got something a little bit like out of the ordinary, like with a scarf and that.
I got a plant as well. The pot, it's really nice. I think it's quite nice.
But normally, you hear stories from China about other teachers about people getting gift cards for Walmart for like 500 kwai, which is essentially £50.
Oh my god!
One of the guys actually in our school got a 200 kwai gift card for Starbucks, so that's about £20 for Starbucks. Yeah.
And someone else got a bottle of wine.
Yeah, where was my bottle of wine?
That would have gone down well.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other holidays that are just celebrated in China, which we will probably do a podcast about later on in the year.
Yeah.
Maybe around either Halloween or Christmas, we'll do a holiday podcast where we will also talk about how we celebrate Western holidays in China and how that goes down. Okay, so I want to jump right into it. Since we just had that monster week, I think we would talk about going back to school. So first of all, something that's very, very different from the east to the west is the Chinese teaching style. Would you like to kick us off with that one, Dean?
Yeah, sure. Chinese teaching style. I find that it's a lot more regimented. The teachers will be in complete control of their class. I understand with 50 to 55 kids in a class, you really do need to be iron disciplined. But you find that...
But like, I think one thing that differs between the Chinese teaching style and the way that we're supposed to teach as foreign teachers is that, you know, it's not a lot of fun for the kids when they're being lectured at by the Chinese teachers. And when we come in to teach, it's supposed to be more, you know, games to reinforce their knowledge, actually getting them to speak conversationally in English. You know, going in and reciting sentences 50 times every class is not the best way to learn a language. So even though the Chinese teaching style has its benefits, I would say overall, the way that we're supposed to teach is the kids get more out of it in terms of actually learning the language. Obviously, the base knowledge isn't there unless they get lectured at. But it's kind of a shame when little 6-year-olds are getting basically university classes at primary school.
Yeah, and that'll stay with them right up until, believe it or not, university, when then they just get given everything on a platter. Like, it's strange because in the West we normally have plain sailing through up until high school. Looking back, hires was difficult, but we did get a lot of help.
It's nothing in comparison to like some of the exams you have to do at university.
Right. So the roles actually reverse. They have an easier time in university. That time is where they use to like find out about themselves and try different sports. And I guess a lot like the university in the West, but the workload is minimal at best.
Yeah, because you find elementary school level that we're all at, that the quantity of knowledge that the kids have to absorb is enormous for how young they are. And like the amount of time they spend in school is just like all day, because even when they're not in school, they're doing night classes or they're doing piano lessons at home or whatever else. So the kids are just constantly learning. At university is probably the first time they get to actually just enjoy themselves.
Let their hair down a bit. Yeah. So Ruth, you've taught almost every age group, is it?
As of tomorrow.
As of tomorrow, yeah. Tomorrow I have my first part-time work at kindergarten, and after that I'll have taught every age group, apart from high school.
High school, right.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm guessing you probably know best about like average times that the students are in school from. Because I only know it from my perspective of the younger kids.
Yeah.
But you know it a lot better from the older kids as well. So you want to give us a little bit about that?
I'll show off my expertise on Chinese timetabling. So last year I taught grade 5, which is like primary 5, to grade 9, which is just before you go into high school at 14 or 15. And from grade 7, which is about primary 7, you're basically in school from 7 a.m, 7:30 in the morning. You'll have breakfast at school. Class will start at 8. And then you'll be there until midday when you'll have lunch, 2.5 hour nap. Maybe 2 hours. 2.5 hours seems like the lucky kids get that one. And then you're in school from 2:30. You're in class 2:30 until maybe about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. You'll have a break for dinner, and then in that time, and then you'll go home at about 9 o'clock, 9:30, then do homework until 12, then get up the next day and do it all again. And for grade 9s, at the end of the year, they have this really big exam so that they can go to high school, so there's a lot of pressure on them.
The Gaokao, right?
Yeah, so like if you don't do well in this exam, you don't go to good high school, which means that you probably won't get into a good university, because, I mean, I guess there are so many people in China that it's very, very competitive to get into the best universities and the best high schools. So the pressure is on from a very early age to be academically successful. Most of the grade 9 kids I taught last year would be in school Monday to Friday, and then on a Saturday they'd be in 8 until 4. They'd go home and do their homework, and on a Sunday they would probably get up, have some tutoring, or maybe go to some private classes or to a training school for a few hours, come home, maybe have a piano lesson, then do their homework. So there's like no free time for kids at all.
Crazy work ethic. And as far as I'm aware, that is all the way through from high, because we met some people last year, Dean, when we were in high school, and that's what they do all the way through the 3 years of high school in preparation for this Gaokao, which is essentially hires in the UK and SATs in America, and they just prepare for this test for 3 years.
And on the one hand, you feel sorry for them because, you know, as a kid, like, you're supposed to be able to have all this free time. You're supposed to be able to enjoy being young and being a kid, being a child. But then on the other hand, like, you know that this is why China is becoming such like an amazing like power, why the people are going abroad and getting good jobs, and you know it's working out well for them. But then I guess it's just about getting the balance, and here there's not really a balance.
Yeah, because like what you were saying about the Gaokao is basically it's like hires on steroids.
Yeah.
Because if these kids like do badly, it's not like in the UK where you go to a high school and after your first year you can shift to a different university. After the first year you can shift to a different university.
Or even have the option to do something else like an apprenticeship or go to college or something like that.
It's like the be all and end all is I go to university, I get a good job, I go abroad, or I stay here and I look after my entire family.
Yeah. Well, I guess for the children that we teach, because we obviously teach like upper middle class kids, so their experience is different to what I imagine is life is like in rural China, where there aren't so many opportunities. But certainly all of the teenagers and the young adults who I've worked with, the pressure has been on to like go to university, get a good job, go abroad, or stay here and work really hard and take care of their family.
I find that the Chinese teaching style is very reminiscent of, you know, school when my mum was going to it. So that was maybe about 30 to 40 years ago, Mum, sorry. Yeah. And, you know, back then they also had a similar, not like as extreme as Gaokao, but they had a similar test which would basically say, are you going to go to this kind of high school where they focus on trade, or are you going to go to this kind of high school where you focus on academia? And that's very much what I feel like the Gaokao is like. It is the be all and end all of the rest of your life, essentially.
Well, especially when you're that age as well. When you're 15, the world seems like it's ending most of the time anyway.
Totally.
And this is the biggest challenge that you've had to take, and it just so happens that you're doing like university level maths alongside all of your peers from across the province to get into one high school. The pressure must be tremendous. Like, I can't even imagine.
Right, what a horrible time. Like, if there is ever a good time in your youth to be picking what you're going to do, to be basically like mapping out the rest of your life, it's certainly not like at that age, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like, I was a little shit when I was in high school, especially that age. And, well, fair enough, I still don't know entirely what I want to do, but like, I had no idea what I was wanting to do back then. I mean, I just wanted to get to the end of the day so I could go home and play on my GameCube. I mean, like, that's as far as I thought ahead. So, it's a lot of stress with some of the students here.
Another thing that's really different here in China compared to Western education, and that's that in the classes, the kids stay in one class all day, and they have other teachers for different subjects come to them in the class rather than them going to the teacher's class. But there is this one constant, which is called like a head teacher.
Right,
here.
yeah.
And it's kind of like a registration teacher back home, but, maybe a bit more important, and registration teachers or form teachers, however you call it, they like check your attendance at the start of the day, and then they're like, bye, you got on with your day. Whereas here, the head teacher's always checking in on the class. They have probably the best rapport with the pupils. Would you say so?
Yeah, at the start of the day. So I take the kids in for breakfast, and the first class of every day is 20 minutes reading with your head teacher. Straight away, you see them every day. And then on top of that, he also takes 1 to 2 classes throughout the day. And then he also deals with any and all discipline.
But certainly with the head teachers, they're responsible for all discipline. And in Chinese culture, there's a lot of losing face. So I would find, especially last year, if kids behave very badly and I had to take an issue and say these kids are so badly behaved that it's uncontrollable even for me, then the head teacher would take it they would apologise to me, and they would take it as a personal problem directly to them.
But like, I don't know what you guys think. Like, I have a hard time sort of understanding whether this difference is a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's a good thing in terms of discipline, because a lot of the kids, so that we've got a math teacher that's in my office, and she sees the kids, I think maybe 3 or 4 times a week. So basically, if they're being little toe rags in class during maths, they don't care, because they're not going to see their maths teacher for another maybe 2 days.
Right.
And any and all punishment seems to just fizzle out after that. So I think it's good in that term.
I think it's probably also like a necessary thing. You know, like if you've got 10 different teachers a day, it's probably nice to have a constant, not only to discipline them, but like children like a familiar face, and it must be nice to have somebody to go to and speak to if, you know, you're missing your parents. I mean, when I went to primary school, I was so happy to be there on the first day, and then every day after for about 2 weeks I cried and didn't want to be there. So if you have somebody who is there for you, who you can talk to and approach, it's probably very comforting, especially for the smaller children who do have 5, 6, 7, 8 different teachers in one day. To see that person, I think that teacher eats lunch with them as well, so they go into the classroom, they'll have a meal together, you know, they get to have some sort of constant kind of presence there, which is probably quite comforting for some of them.
I think it's also nice as well because if there's any issues, they maybe can't relate to the other teachers as much because they don't see them. Although this guy is the bad cop, he can also be the good cop because he can help you with the problems. Because there's been one girl that's done nothing but cry since she's got to school in the international class beside me. And she's always in my office, and the head teacher's always trying to console her and look after her a bit. It's also kind of like a parental figure that's at school.
Yeah.
So they have direct contact with the parents at home, and they take into consideration like, oh, this is a scary time for especially grade 1s who have never done anything like this before. It's a scary time for them. So I will not only help them be disciplined for the rest of the years through school, but I'll also look after them.
That idea of them being a parental figure is interesting because the little kids especially, they don't really have a constant parental figure, I don't think. Because if you think about how it is living with your family in China, when you're a young kid, your parents are probably both at work all day. You're probably being taken to and picked up from school by your grandparents. So like your grandparents are that parental figure. You don't end up like spending a lot of time with your parents until you're older, because then you have your parents move in with you, or you move in with your parents with your young family, and then like you're spending like dinner time with your parents. Then it's a very sort of weird dynamic.
Yeah, it's the best way to think about it is like an upside down pyramid, because you've got one child, 2 parents, all 4 grandparents, and because of the one child policy. So it's kind of like, and families tend to live together in the same house and take care of each other.
So I guess that's where it maybe describes why, you know, the whole education system is so strict here in China, because 2 sets of grandparents are basically relying on one child to carry them through, you know, their old age. So I'm not 100% sure about how pensions work here. But I don't think it's anything like a state pension back home. I think they get very little to maybe no support. So basically what happens is for these young kids that are going through school now is that they are looked after until they're about 30. So they are given the best opportunity to get into a good university by going to good schools, having private tutors. They also are given an apartment to live in or a nice house. So their parents will sort that out, or their grandparents will help and sort that out. And they'll also be given a car. And then around about 30, they're expected the tables to be changed. Yeah. Where, this is typically where Chinese people will start having families. So parents and grandparents will look after the children, but expect to be looked after themselves by their children. So they essentially are like babysitters, nannies, and parents all rolled into one.
Yeah. I think
so. Children take over the upkeep of the house. You know, they pay for anything. They pay for gas, electricity, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess it kind of like highlights why it's important to be well educated in China and why it's important to go to a good university. Because you need to, in the end, look after potentially six different people.
Exactly.
Plus your child, so 7.
Yeah. You have so many more responsibilities here when you're a professional person.
Yeah, I think families is definitely a much bigger part of your life here, and there's so much more expectation to look after everybody, which in turn probably puts a lot of pressure onto young people from when they're like 15 until they're old enough to be taken care of by the rest of their family, right?
Yeah. And I think like I said before, like I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because you can see, you know, oh, it's good because people here are very intelligent, they're very hardworking. But then on the other hand, like you're starting your professional life at 15 basically is not a good way to complete your youth, I feel like.
So we talked a little bit about the head teacher and how the students have a kind of fear and almost love for them. But how do you find the students interact with you guys at school?
I mean, like, they love us. We're like, regardless of how terrible we are at teaching or
talk about yourself.
Excuse me, Tony. I'm a great teacher, mate. What are you talking about?
But like, you know, what I mean is, you know, we could be terrible. We're not. We're all great. Or we could be horrible people. We're not. We're all wonderful. But, you know, because you're different and because you're going to be different from the Chinese teacher, you are a celebrity. You're the class clown. You're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I tend to find that the kids have a great fascination for us. Because we're different, we come from different countries. I tend to find the kids are very curious, they have a lot of questions. I found this year, with this new school, quality of English is really good for their age. It's really, and they're able to, and they do ask questions like, where are you from? Do you have brothers or sisters? What's Scotland like? You know, and they do have an...
How much do you get paid?
Give me your money, where's your wallet?
And it drives them to have and our presence here helps them want to learn English.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they see the relevance of the language.
That's a good thing about our school. Our school is so geared towards them learning English. Everything about it is geared towards them learning English. They don't just learn English in English class, they learn English in all of their subjects. For example, Lewis, you're an international class teacher.
So the way that my class works is I see one class, but maybe 2 to 4 times a day, and everything is English. I not only do the standard English class with them, but I do science, I do art, I do maths, and I do PE, all in English. They also get a subsidized class in Chinese.
Right.
So they can also keep up with the rest of the school. Not saying that I'm slower or that I'm faster than, you know, the Chinese teacher, but so they're getting the state education as well as this like kind of immersive English crash course almost.
And the parents, they pay a lot of money for that.
Yeah. So what you were saying, Dean, is like how their English is a lot better. I think because we are at such a, you know, it's a, I think it would be like, it's quite prestigious, this school.
They bill it as an experimental language school.
It's kind of like an international school.
Yeah,
in terms of how it's
essentially
structured, how it's laid out, how the curriculum is, even I would say down to the building layout and the playground and facilities available. It's really, really good.
And if you compare that to, Ruth and I's school from last year, but also I think it's the same for you. I taught in a school that wasn't so much geared towards English. Instead of teaching, 1 to 4 classes total, I taught 18 different classes a week and saw each of them once a week. There's much less emphasis on how important it is to learn English at that school. At this school is becoming, or is indicative more of how China is approaching learning English. I think people here think it is really important.
Especially as because Wuhan is like a tier 2 city, so like tier 1 cities are like Beijing and Shanghai. Wuhan's like a tier 2 city, but it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's more and more foreign investment here. I mean, there's like a Walmart and a Carrefour and other types of supermarket in Wuhan.
They're all available here.
Yeah. So I think that the focus is now on like Wuhan in 10, 15, 20 years is going to be hopefully quite an international city. I mean, there's daily flights here from Paris and from Moscow.
Right, because they have a link. They have a link with Paris, don't they?
And it's, I think I'm right in saying that it has the largest student population in China.
Yeah, so there is a big
that has an influence.
Yeah, so there is a big focus on learning English, and I think a lot of people's parents, a lot of children's parents want their kids to be successful, and I think part and parcel of that now is being able to speak a second language. Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's why they're dumping so much money into education here, and why we've got a school like this, because they are spending a lot of money to make sure that we get over here and then we do the best job we possibly can so that they can have an international city in the next 10, 15 years, you were saying.
Yeah. Because the facilities in the school we're at, in fact, the school last year as well, is incredible. You've got e-boards, connections on the e-board, electronic boards to the internet. It's facilities that, frankly, I didn't see until I was at high school. No, I was lucky to get to a good high school.
I went to, I mean, I'm not even going to say what school I went to, but I went to a reasonably prestigious school in Glasgow.
What does it rhyme with?
I don't think you can rhyme it. So
it is impossible to rhyme. And I don't remember that those,
they're essentially computers,
right?
Yeah. Big touchscreen
computers. Those things being there. So
interactive whiteboards.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whiteboards. There we go. Someone went to school. I mean, I was at a smaller school, as I said, and it is considered to be quite a nice school in the northeast of Scotland, but we didn't have an interactive whiteboard in any of the classes until I was in maybe about 3rd year. So that's 2007, and it was only in one class. It was in history. So like,
Who needs that for us?
I know,
It's really relevant.
Totally. It's all in dusty old books, mate. What are you doing getting it on the internet? So, so like the technology that's integrated into the schools here. So they've got all these sports facilities outside as well. And they really are trying to make it like what I picture in my head is like a traditional American school.
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Another big part of school, I guess, is homework. And I think we can all, relate. We've all seen how much homework Chinese children have to do regardless of age. I mean, I know last year when I was teaching the older students, they would be doing homework constantly, like even in class, they'd be doing their maths homework just because they didn't even have time. There was not enough time in the day to do all of the homework that they were given, which makes me feel so sad.
Yeah.
The amount of books that they have as well.
Yeah.
Fair enough if you're like 13, 14 and up, like you can carry a bag of books. But you see these grade ones coming to school with bags bigger than themselves. You just see when you're like outside the school gate and you see them all coming in, it's just a bunch of walking bags. You're like, there is no people there, just like little feet.
Do you know there were kids at my school last year who were like older students who I taught who used to bring like, those like wheelie suitcases that you can take on like budget airline flights that they let you take on.
Yeah.
They used to bring those to school to carry all of their books
Yeah,
for
I
one
saw
day.
that.
And I used to make them all take their books off their desks. They'd always be like playing with each other or playing with their books and not listening. So I used to make them clear their desks and it took like a good 5 minutes to get everything off the desk and on the floor and, get ready for class once you asked them to do that.
Did you guys ever give homework
No.
last year?
I think I speak for every child in the whole world when I say that no one likes homework.
What?
And as a foreign teacher who's supposed to be your pal and your friend and fun, I would feel like a total heel if I gave these kids homework when you see the like pile of homework they already have. Like it would be mean.
Especially when your lesson revolves around throwing a ball about.
Right.
And trying to get him to stand up and clap and do. And you're like, okay, by the way, guys, you've got 50 lines to do for tomorrow morning and I want to see him on the desk.
Yeah, like I can't come in, like sing a song, play Hangman for 20 minutes and then be like, oh, by the way, you have to read all this, write all this, and then give it to me so that I can grade it the next day.
Well, I suppose I'm the token heel in the corner because I was
Absolute boot.
I was known to give out homework, but that was only as a last resort for bad behaviour, to correct bad behaviour. Like if the class, because for like Lewis and I, last year we did not have a co-teacher, a Chinese co-teacher,
not at all.
so we had 55 kids.
Yeah.
And we were the only person there. And we had a huge language barrier. And I used to find that, especially in the first semester, the first year when I came out here to do this, I found if I gave the classes that really misbehaved homework every time they misbehaved, they soon learned not to misbehave because they didn't want the homework.
Yeah, but like...
Because you'll do it in class or you'll do it at home. So
Yeah,
I don't care.
I did that once with my older students. I gave them work to do in class, written work, and basically said to them, you have 40 minutes now to do this. If you don't finish it, then you can take it home. So
Not to crap all over your teaching style, but I still think that there's nothing a kid could do to me or in my class that would make me like give them homework. Sure, I'll shout at them and I'll send them out and I won't let them play the game or whatever, but I don't think I would ever give them homework.
it's different if the kids are older though.
That's
They're
true.
7.
Yeah, that's true. I've never taught the like middle to high school kids,
Yeah.
so
I mean, like, I'm just too much of a pushover to like actually dish out homework. Last year I had this grade 8 class and their English was very, very poor. So I was at a brand new school. They basically took students in from all over the Shenning, I was in a city called Shenning, all over Shenning. So there was some kids who had never learned English before. And unfortunately I had a class full of them who were grade 8. So that's like 14 years old. Is
13,
it? 13, 14. And they gave me this book expecting me to teach them about, the air pollution in China and why it's bad and how can we prevent it. Basically, they wanted me to teach them how to write a mini essay. But like, they could barely say, hello, my name is. So, I always dreaded going into that class. And whatever I prepared just failed outright. I would go in, it was always on a Monday. I had 3 grade 8 classes. They were all terrible on a Monday.
Bad memories are flooded
they
back.
came flooding back. I wouldn't sleep on a Sunday night. I just tossing and turning in my bed like, no. So I go to this grade 8 class and I'm freaking out. I'm like, what am I going to do? Whatever I prepared just doesn't work anyway. And I crash through the door and one guy who has never said anything to me the whole semester looks up at me in perfect English and says, teacher, can I please watch a video on the big screen? And I was like, you know what? Of course we can. And then I think I did that for a month. So the first one was boys' turn. So we had this movie about this alligator that was in a rice field. It was pretty cool, actually. And then it was the girls' turn, because the girls, they don't want to watch an alligator in a rice field. So it was like,
I would.
Would you?
Yeah, that sounds
Well,
fun.
I'm not trying to gender role alligator into a field movies, but or gender specific it. But then we watched this rom-com, and the boys looked like they were about to rip their eyes out.
I like a good rom-com.
You like a rom-com? Well, okay, right. So, typically the boys and girls at this age were very focused on what they liked. There's no way I could hand out homework after that as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh, by the way, I want you to research alligators and and how to date.
Yeah, what's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile?
Yeah.
You've got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Go.
Teacher.
help me. Okay, so I think we've given, school life in China good rundown.
Yep.
Yeah, but if you have any questions about things that we haven't covered,
Yes.
you should tweet at us or email us, and we'll give you all of the means to do that at the end of the podcast.
Excellent. So I went online and I looked for Chinese student stereotypes. So this was I think it was taken from a US survey, and I guess the only interaction US students would have had with Chinese students is if they came over to America.
Right.
So I have 4 stereotypes that I found that were like kind of constant across a lot of different surveys.
Hit us with them.
Okay, so the first one is Chinese people are very self-disciplined. What do we think about that?
Well, they have to be to jump through the educational hoops that they're expected to go through.
Right.
They do have a very good discipline.
But then, if they're talking about Chinese kids or Chinese students generally are well behaved, I would suggest that is an entirely wrong stereotype.
Yeah, so we went home in the summer. There was this TV show on the BBC.
Did you watch all of that?
No, I didn't watch any of it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just going to shit all over it, even though I didn't see it. So apparently, maybe I got this wrong. This teacher went to Shanghai and was amazed by the perfect behavior that they saw, impeccable behavior in this Chinese school in Shanghai. And was had this kind of epiphany and was like, okay, what if we bring this back to the UK and we'll bring Chinese teachers back and we'll kind of put into the classroom all of the things that I've seen here. I mean, I don't know. I think that's so silly. I think that children are children across the world. I thought I would come to China, all the kids would be impeccably behaved. It would be really, really easy. And it's not, because you have children who don't want to be there. You have children who don't like English, or regardless of the subject, don't like maths, don't like PE. I mean, I didn't like PE when I was 15. You can't just assume that because there's this stereotype that all of the kids are going to be the same, because kids are kids all over the world and they want to have fun, they want to play, they don't want to be in class most of the time. So I don't necessarily know if that stereotype stands up when you just think about it logically.
Yeah, I think the divergence, I suppose, the two factors would be, on the one hand, the schools impose a lot of discipline, but on the other hand, and that does manifest itself, but on the other hand, kids are kids.
Right.
And they want to run around and cause trouble, and they do in their classes. We've always had that kid in a class that's just causing trouble, running around, slapping another kid. It happens. Kids will be kids.
As a teacher, and when we were at school as students, I think there was always that one peer or that one child in your class who was slightly harder to manage than any other.
I think whoever that teacher was who went over to China in that BBC documentary, I don't know what school he went to, but I reckon he was either drugged, duped, or dreaming. That skill does not exist here.
Do you not remember though when you had visitors at school and the teachers were like, you have to be very well behaved or else you're going to be in detention for a month? So you're probably just trying to show off and show China or show your country or your school to be the best it can
they maybe
be.
Would have winged it if you love China, you will be disciplined or whatever.
Yeah.
But also I find that the way they behave around Western teachers and around their Chinese teachers is very different.
Yeah.
So I've walked past classes and there has been deathly silence, and the kids are, angels, the most well behaved I've ever seen, but maybe out of fear instead of just being well behaved. But when they see us romping down the corridor, it is essentially I remember in high school, there was always that one substitute teacher that you could get away with murder with.
Yeah.
And I definitely had that in my high school. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure you did. And I also think we're kind of seen as that substitute teacher. Oh, we can have a bit of fun. We can kind of let our hair down a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which is totally fine. But then that means that the behavior is 9 times out of 10 absolutely atrocious, because one kid will take it too far. One kid will see that other kid taking it too far. and it just turns into a absolute shit show.
Even when it's not in the context of general bad behavior. Like, for example, today in one of my classes, I was getting them to come out and act out emotions, and the emotion was bored. I got a couple of kids to come out and they would go, they'd like yawn, or they'd like just like shrug their shoulders and be like, I'm bored. And then this one kid who is notoriously badly behaved would come up to the front and he was like, I'm very, very bored. And I was like, are you commenting on my class here? Or are you trying to be smart? Get back to your seat, buddy.
Okay, so the second thing that I found was Chinese students are intelligent or nerdy.
Yeah, you do have
that
that stereotype. I mean, like, maybe it definitely thought that happened to me. I had this personal idiotic vision in my head that I'd come here and all the kids would be in like little suits and little hats, and it'll be all, big glasses, and they'll all be super intelligent, and it's just not at all like that.
Whenever you like see,
Suited and booted.
Yeah, whenever you see like a Hollywood movie that's set in a high school or something like that, there's always the like nerdy Asian kid. I'm thinking Donnie Darko.
Right, yeah.
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls, exactly.
My favourite High School Musical. I don't know, is there an Asian
I think
dude
it's
in
that
that?
diverse.
Oh, right. It's very whitewashed, that film, isn't it?
Even in Twilight.
Even in Twilight, there you go. Who's seen them? Me, all three.
Oh yeah, I'm all about like.
Was it 3 or 4?
Glittering vampires.
Shame on you.
Of course you are.
But yeah, I think that the reason that nerdy stereotype exists isn't necessarily because all Chinese students are nerdy. I think it's because when you're seeing them in a foreign country and out with their comfort zone, the people who are there, the Chinese students who are there, are almost certainly either top of their class,
right,
top of their school, possibly top of their province,
yep,
Yeah.
top of their city. So, you have to be intelligent and nerdy to get in that position.
So
they're all book smart. They're all hard workers.
Yeah, especially if you're like going to America or to the UK or another English speaking country, even a country where, English isn't the first language, you're going to be studying in your second language if you're Chinese or if you come from Asia in general. So you are going to be a lot smarter than most of the people you're at the university with in that country. I mean, to come and study in a language that is not only so far removed from your own, that uses a completely different structure from your own, but also a different alphabet, like you have to be supremely intelligent. I think maybe it's doing people a disservice because these people have worked so hard, and just to like cast them off as just being like nerds and losers is probably really, really unfair.
Yeah.
And shows us to be ignorant more than anything else.
So you went away for a year, right?
6 months.
6 months to
Yeah.
Holland, was it?
God, Lewis, do you not know me at all?
Yeah, sorry. And I'm guessing it was difficult, but it wasn't too much of a struggle, right? Or how did the process kind of go?
Oh, it's fairly easy. My school had an Erasmus program, and
Right.
I applied. And then I was accepted to the university, and I moved out there pretty easily. My parents actually drove me there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of clothes.
But like in terms of like is the university in Maastricht in Holland, was that like a good university that
Yeah.
meant that you had to have good grades to get there?
Yes.
Yes.
We'll say
I
yes.
was a grade A student.
This is
A's
great.
all
This is
over
good.
uni.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is like I think it's different here. I think you need to be the best, or
Right.
at least
Oh yeah,
very,
well,
very
I think
good
to be
get
fair,
abroad.
Glasgow University, like the law school in general, has really good links with foreign universities. So as much as I would like to broadcast on the internet that I am the most intelligent person in the world as a straight A student, everybody who knows me would be able to tell you that's wrong. And I was very fortunate in the fact that I got to go abroad, but my grades didn't really have any kind of effect on that.
Too much of an impact.
That was
Yeah.
the same for me.
Also, it's a big investment getting a visa alone for a Chinese anyone to leave, but especially a Chinese student to leave and study for 3+ years.
Yeah.
So it's not something you not saying that you guys went away on a whim.
No.
But I'm sure it wasn't something that you had long term in your mind.
No. These kids like know that they want to go abroad when they're 10.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't decide I wanted to go to Australia till like 6 months before I left.
Yeah, and I think also it's a really big investment, in just not just in terms of the visa and the flights and the accommodation abroad, but also in terms of the fact that you probably have to go to extra English classes. You have
Right.
to study for exams. In China, you have to do this thing called the IELTS, which allows you to study abroad. It proves that your English is of a good enough standard for you to go and study in English. So you have to have special tutoring for that. You have to buy the books and do all of the online learning. it's really expensive, like even before
you leave the country.
Yeah, before you even leave, before you even get the opportunity to apply for university. What if you don't get in?
And also, the visas will not allow any working of any kind. So you have to be fully supported by your parents. There's no way you can get a part-time job in a bar or anything like that. Yeah. Or if you do, it's very difficult. The third stereotype was that Chinese students are selfish. I personally don't really know where this comes from, because when I arrived in China, a lot of people bent over backwards to make sure that I was well accommodated for, I was watered, I was fed, and that all my needs were met. But I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, sorry, not every Chinese person who I've met and who I'm friends with and who I've worked with has been so hospitable and so welcoming and so kind and so generous. My co-teacher today, her sister owns a clothes shop. She gave me a present of like 4 different items of clothing just because we're now friends. Everybody is so kind and generous and wants to spend time with you and wants to be your friend. So in that sense, I think if people got to know Chinese students, which kind of relates to the next stereotype that we're probably going to talk about, they probably would realize that people aren't so selfish.
Yeah, I think selfish is if there's going to be a stereotype, selfish is the wrong word. I still don't think it like qualifies as a stereotype, but here, because there are so many people and because life is cutthroat, and I mean, we've been talking about how difficult it is to like get a good job and how difficult it is to be top of your class and get to go abroad and whatnot. I think people here are very individualistic, and not in a bad way. They need to be out for themselves, because if you aren't, you're going to be left behind. And I think you need to, look after yourself, look after your family, look after your close friends, but ultimately, you are number one. You need to look out for yourself first and foremost. I mean, the best example I can give of that is a very petty example, but when you're getting on the Wuhan metro, which is an absolute shit show, you need to push your way, and you need to be quick. And no Chinese person is going to let the pregnant woman on first, or let the old person sit down, or, let the woman with a baby in her arms get on the metro before you. And that's just an example of, or a mirroring of that individualistic attitude. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that it's just the way people are here because society makes you that way, or makes you have to be that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. To put it in a quick context, China is like roughly the size of Europe. It's a country the size of a continent with umpteen different ethnic and religious and national groupings within it. Europe's got like 355, 400 million people. China's got like 1.4 billion. If you aren't seen and you don't make yourself heard, you just are invisible. It's a necessity. It's just the way it is in a country with such a density.
Yeah, and put into the context of Wuhan, there are 10 million people here and 2 subway lines. If you're wanting to get on public transport or you're wanting to go anywhere, especially at rush hour, you're going to need to make an effort, or else it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
We will definitely be talking about the Wuhan metro in more detail in a later episode, when we talk about Wuhan as a whole. But Wuhan metro is one of the best places to get stories that you would never hear about anywhere else in the world.
Immediately, right? 5 stories popped up. This is not useful for now, but maybe later.
But I just wanted to quickly share one. It's just so as you were saying, people are normally out for themselves, but not in
selfish. Is
not in terms of it's not a sinister individualism,
right?
But Chinese people, they can't pack a shopping bag, let alone pack a metro that's supposed to accommodate the whole of the city. You'll find that a lot of the times, obviously, when you get on the metro, you're supposed to let people out, and then you get on, and it's all very civilized, and you toff your hat or whatever. I don't know what British people do, something like that, right? But here, it is just a rammy. So 50% of the time when the doors open, there's just going to be people cutting each other up and just trying to get in and out at the same time. But it's very strange, because as soon as they're across that little line, that means they're no longer in the station, they're on the train. They just stop. They stop doing whatever they're doing. And if they have bags and suitcases, they just get dropped where they are. Normally I would go into the carriage and then go down the side so that there was plenty of room for everybody else. But other people in China will just, as soon as they're on, they don't care about other people getting on. And it causes some of my,
extreme anger.
It causes some of my lesser traits to flare up quite quickly. if we go on the metro 9 times out of 10, I will be fizzing by the end of it because someone's either done something that's I find really stupid, or they've just like not considered other people, and it's just really frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last stereotype that I found about Chinese students was they are anti-social.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. I had a Korean roommate when I went to Holland, and her whole social life and all of her social interaction was with her friends. They would cook meals together every single night. They would eat a meal together, and it was the same with my friend who was Hong Kong Chinese. She would eat with her friends. They would all try and cook a meal. It's kind of like potluck. You brought everything to dinner. You sat around, you ate, you spoke about your day. My experience on exchange of getting to know people was going to the pub and drinking. And I don't necessarily think one way is better than the other. I mean, we come from very different cultures, but I don't think it makes people antisocial if their culture doesn't revolve around consuming alcohol the way that we do, especially at university in the UK.
You forget how big a thing culture shock actually is. So maybe the only encounter of America, so say if the Chinese student is going to America, that they will have of that is a stereotypical high school movie, which obviously is nothing like America. On top of that, their English will be very good, but they don't know all the slang and the terminology that we use in the West. Especially when we get here and we're from Scotland, there's a lot of things that we just can't say because people won't understand what we're saying. We kind of have to strip back our language to, not to basic, but you have to remove any like local words that you would use. Yeah. Yeah. So you've got that culture shock. You've got that not really fully being able to understand local people in that country. And, you know, we're the same because I'm sure Chinese people will think we're antisocial because we just hang around with each other. You instinctively go towards something that you find familiar because it's more comforting.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like, when I was in Australia, a Western style English speaking country, even I and the other foreign people who were on exchange with me, Americans, British, Norwegian, whoever, we all like gravitated toward each other. And obviously I have Australian friends, but like the majority of the friends that I made were foreign people. And that's because, you know, when you're an outsider, you gravitate towards other outsiders. And I guess it must be the same for Chinese people when they go abroad because it's what's comforting. And like, I really think that this whole antisocial stereotype is so wrong. If anything, it's more of an indictment on Western people not being knowledgeable about other cultures. Not that everyone is like that in the West, but for example, at Glasgow University, in the library, there will often be stories of the Chinese, the Asian student falling asleep at their desk. And people will be like, look at him, there or her, they're antisocial, they're lazy, or whatever. When in fact, the reason that they've fallen asleep at their desk is because in China, at 12:30, after you've had your lunch, you go for a nap. And everyone does it here, and it's great. It's something that should be done all over the world, I think.
It's not a nap that you go home and you go to bed for. Right. It's like, after a party, you're absolutely wasted. You just sank a bottle of whiskey or whatever. You just crash where you are. You know what I mean?
Doesn't matter whether you're at work, you're at your desk.
You're on the metro.
You're
on the metro.
In McDonald's.
In McDonald's, anywhere.
And you do find, like, at our school, the teachers will, like, have little fold-down chairs and things that they would go and take
like
with
a camp
them.
bed.
Like a camp bed, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Ruth. I couldn't remember.
Are you an English teacher?
I don't know what I'm doing here. But they'll bring things like that in with them, and so that they can go in their office and just sleep for that 2 hours. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And they do it. It's just like, as you say, like English-speaking countries like Britain, America.
They don't do it.
Because in Spain they do it, in Portugal they do it, in Italy and Greece they do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So
I think, like, conclusion of all that is Chinese student stereotypes are bullshit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Inaccurate.
The stereotypes only exist in our heads as Westerners.
Yeah.
Us bloody Westerners. Right, okay, so I think we've done a pretty good roundup for this week. I just wanted to do one wee segment at the end. I wanted to talk about the best or worst thing to happen to us at school, obviously in China.
Ruth should go first.
Yeah.
Okay, Ruth, I think you should go first because you have good stories.
I have the best. Right, no pressure.
Ruth
Okay.
incites rage from her kids.
No, I don't. I'm lovely to all of them. I really am. Okay, so I think the best thing about being here in general is just how appreciated you feel and how much the kids respond to you. I mean, walking through the school, everybody says hello to you. They want to talk to you, like Dean was saying. They want to ask you questions. They want to know about where you're from. And I think it's really, really endearing and really sweet, and it makes you feel really special, which is always important, I think, in your job. But the one thing that happened last year that was maybe the best thing was one of my older students gave me a Chinese name and wrote it out in beautiful calligraphy, and it was really special and really sweet, and it's probably something that I'll always have.
What did it mean?
It means like a poem. That's my Chinese name means like a poem. I know.
What does Ruth mean?
Like a boot. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Don't cut it out.
And I think the worst thing that probably happened was when one of my students last year threw a desk at the other, which I have very little teacher training in general and nothing to kind of prepare me for when somebody launches a desk at a kid sitting down.
What did you do? I would be terrified, right?
I laughed. I didn't know what to do. And they were older. They were grade 8, and I kind of recovered my composure. I think I actually might have sworn. And then I was like, no one thinks this is okay. Everyone knows this is very bad. And I was like doing like mad, like crazy hand actions, like thumbs down, like everyone knows this is bad. And they were like, yes, Ruth, we're fully aware that you can't throw desks at other people. Yeah, it was pretty... And yeah, just not nice.
What about you, Dean?
The most endearing case, it was in the school last year, not the one we've just started. There was one kid, a girl, that came up to me, and she was very shy. She was not confident at all with her English. And what she wanted to do was write me little notes. Very good English, perfectly spelt. I find that's like always the case. Very good spelling, very good reading.
Grammar, right?
Grammar's perfect. They just struggle to enunciate and pronunciate. But she wrote me letters, and we just exchanged letters at the end of each class for like a couple of weeks, and that built her confidence up, and it was quite nice.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
I'll probably keep those letters.
Yeah.
The most ridiculous thing that happened to me was one that involved Lewis. Lewis had just arrived. Again, it was last year's school. And he wanted to observe some of my classes, see what the kids were like, what he'd be just throwing himself into.
Yeah, what I'll be getting into.
Yeah.
Shark Tank.
Yeah, piranha fish everywhere. What happened was, first class, perfect class, kids are so well behaved. And I thought, yes. This is exactly what it's going to be like for all your classes, Lewis. And then we came to my naughty class. And there's always a naughty class. And they were, halfway through the lesson, kids just decide they're going to have a fisticuffs. They just start laying into each other. The whole class gets up and starts crowding round and, like a mob. And I was like, oh my God. And Lewis's face was, it's like, what have I thrown myself
This
into?
was like day 5 of me being in China, and I had this like stereotypical idea of a Chinese student in my head, like well behaved, very smart.
Stereotypes are wrong.
Very stereotypes are bad. But yeah, that was a massive hoof up the arse, because then I realised this is not what it's going to be like for the rest of the
I
year.
was absolutely mortified. I thought, oh my God, he's going to think I'm the worst teacher in the world, which I'm definitely not.
Yeah. And then I found out you actually are just the worst teacher in the world, mate. I didn't need to think. I had proof.
I think you'll find I'm a heel.
Okay, have you got any stories about your best or worst thing that's happened to you at school, man?
Yeah, well, as usual with everything in life, I think the most memorable things that happen are bad things. And the worst thing that ever happened to me during a class was when I was teaching at an English camp in February of this year in Changsha, which is a city in neighbouring Hunan province. And there I was teaching a class of 4 boys, and we were talking about clothes. And the particular piece of clothing we were on at that moment was the belt. I showed them a picture of a belt, and they had blank expressions. They didn't know what a belt was. So I took my belt off and I showed them it. And this prompted one kid to start like playing with his waistband of his trousers, even though he had no belt. Before you knew it, he'd pull his trousers down and back up again. And I was just like, what is going on here? My Chinese assistant was completely asleep. The other boys were like shouting at him. They were like just incredulous, and I didn't know what to do, so I just moved on. But perhaps the thing that I will remember most in my time in China from last year will be the one thing that I want to forget the most.
Totally. It sounds like an ordeal, to say the least.
Yeah.
Now that I've been thinking about the worst and the best thing that happened to me, I there's been times where it's been so bad that I've had to shout as loud as I can and people do not hear me. That's fine. That happens maybe once a week or whatever. That was in the old school anyway. But I can't really think of anything that was notoriously bad. But I could think of something that was really nice that happened to me. In the second semester of last year, I started teaching grade 5s, and I'd never taught them before. And I kind of had a better idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that, they were well disciplined. So I was going to be a bit of a hard ass for the first wee bit. I go into the class and I immediately see one boy is fighting with another boy. So I did see the start of it. I just grabbed them, both of them, put them outside. For 20 minutes, we did the class. I introduced who I was, all that kind of stuff. And then I came back out and I acted out. Do you want to come back in or do you want to stay outside? One boy decided to come back in and the other boy decided to stay outside. I was like, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. For the next month, every time I came into the class, this kid was doing something wrong. He was either punching someone or, as you said, he was bouncing off the walls or he just wasn't listening to me. He was just running about. So he spent the first month outside the classroom and he was missing out on all this stuff that will be graded by the end of the year. We were talking about the Chinese teachers and how they're, normally do the discipline and he caught him once or twice outside the classroom and just took him into the office and he just got, instead of even maybe learning something from outside the classroom, he just got hit a bollocking for maybe about 3 or 4 classes during this month. After that month, the kid's behavior gets a little bit better. He doesn't say anything, but he's not a little pretty much. He starts contributing in class very slowly. At the end of class, I would put on Mr. Bean because I love Mr. Bean. And sometimes my pen drive wouldn't work, so we would get it up on the computer. And that was his little job. He would come up and he would do the Mr. Bean, so he had a little responsibility. So at the very end of the year, we had a little oral English test. I remember him coming in, and I remember the bad start he had at the first month and a bit of the semester, just expecting him to get a bad mark, and he aced every single question. And it was really heartwarming because he really did work hard that year, even though he had such a bad start. And, he really did deserve that A, and a lot more so than some of the kids who find it easier.
Yeah.
So, that really meant something to me because he actually took on board what I was saying, and he took on board what his head teacher was saying, and it all paid off. It all paid off in the end.
Yeah, that's really lovely.
Oh, cheers, mate.
That's heartwarming.
Yeah, just
I feel
hide these tears.
Yeah, just wrapped in a loving. I don't know what I'm going I don't know what I'm saying there.
Okay, so that's the podcast for this week. You can find us at wuhanweeklypod@gmail.com.
You can find us on Facebook, search for Wuhan Weekly Pod in the search bar.
You can find us on Twitter at Wuhan Weekly Pod.
So you can find us on all of these different social media platforms. And if you'd like to get in touch, send us an email, ask us some questions, tell us what you would like to hear about in the future, leave us a comment or tweet at us, anything like that would be great. Also, if you could leave us a review on iTunes on the podcast, the information there, that would be really, really helpful as well. Hopefully that's another way that we can gain some traffic. Please be positive in your comments.
Excellent. That'll do it from us. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.